Good evening and welcome to the 75th anniversary celebration commemorating the founding of the Henry Ford Trade School. When Henry Ford started the trade school, little did he know that he would revolutionize the industry and education. Known as the father of industrial education, he opened the Henry Ford Trade School on October 25, 1916. It was his foresight and desire to serve the community which caused him to establish a school of a different type. A school that would serve the young people in the community in a fashion different from that of regular schools. He felt that boys who knew how to do things with their hands had an advantage over those who only knew how to do things with their minds. So in the operation of this school, boys were taught to use their hands. In 1917, Dr. Frederick E. Searle was appointed the school's first superintendent and retained this position until he retired in 1946. The first trade school building was located in Highland Park. By 1930, Highland Park was consolidated with the Rouge plant in order to provide space for the 3,200 students now enrolled. Shop classes consisted of training in lathe operation, woodworking, foundry, tool and die, including cleanliness, safety, accuracy, and originality. Academic classes consisted of subjects in drafting, American history, mathematics, English, chemistry, and physics. The main objective was to train the boys not only as useful citizens, but in leadership as well. Mr. Ford maintained that craftsmanship without character is worthless. Graduates of the Henry Ford Trade School played a key role in producing war materials during World War II. Here tonight to give a brief history of that role is Mr. Lee R. Collins, Contributions Program Associate of the Ford Motor Company Fund and Trustee for the National Automotive History Collection in association with the Detroit Public Library. And now, Mr. Lee R. Collins.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your having the Collins here tonight to share in your 75th anniversary program. Paul and I had an enjoyable lunch the other day when we discussed our mutual interest in Ford history, and my interest was kindled recently on our trip to Ireland. Naturally, Shirley and I had to visit Henry Ford's ancestral home in Ballinscarthy, County Cork. While there, we heard a charming story about the elder Henry Ford. It seems that he was in Ireland to scout out a new factory site. And one day, on his tour of possible sites, he learned of the needs of a local hospital. They were in dire financial need, and he thought, well, I'll give them 5,000 pounds, which was a considerable amount at that time. The next day, the newspaper had a banner headline reading, "Ford to donate 50,000 pounds. Well, Ford was perplexed. What to do? He was really beside himself for a change, and he consulted with his people, and the decision was made to go with the larger amount. This was a public relations matter, and it seemed the prudent thing to do. But Henry never forgot. On the day he was leaving Ireland, he was surrounded by newsmen, and he was always good for copy. He shot from the hip, and he had a lot of one-liners, so newsmen followed him wherever he went, and they asked whether he had any comments. And Mr. Ford said, "Yes, I do." He said, "I came to you a stranger, and you took me in." Thank you. approach of the 50th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, I thought a little history of Ford's response to that event might be of interest. 50 years ago, the year before Pearl Harbor, Detroit became the fourth largest city in the United States. Ford built its 28 millionth automobile. The Tigers won the American League pennant, but lost the World Series. Everyone was singing "The Last Time I Saw Paris." Rebecca was a movie hit. "For Whom the Bell Tolls" and "How Green Was My Valley" were on the top of the bestseller list. The rest of the world was at war. The British were bombing Berlin. The Allies were fighting Rommel in Africa. Australia and New Zealand were at war with the Japanese in the South Pacific. And German submarines were sinking British and American merchant ships in the Atlantic. It was in these eventful days that the Ford Motor Company was approached by the U.S. government with a question: would Ford undertake the building of the B-24 Liberator bombers? The answer was yes, and so began one of the great sagas of the U.S. industry. For Ford to gear up as a major manufacturer of aircraft was no simple task. Building cars was something the company knew how to do, but building bombers was another matter entirely. Yet the company believed that the mass production of bombers could be achieved by adapting the principle of the moving assembly line, a manufacturing system pioneered by Ford. When Ford presented his plan to adapt automotive assembly techniques to the production of bombers, the proposal was greeted with skepticism by military officials and the aircraft industry alike. But Ford's executives were confident it could be done. In February 1941, additional land was acquired at a site where Ford already owned a large area of farmland, and plans were drawn up for a factory and an airport. Willow Run was born. This bare tract of land was to turn into a giant manufacturing complex, and Ford was to become one of the nation's largest producers of Liberator bombers. On March 18, 1941, work crews and equipment moved in to clear and survey the area. A month later, ground was broken and construction started. Within 6 months, a 3-square-mile area of Michigan countryside was transformed by brick, mortar, steel and concrete, machinery and men into a modern production center, a center that was to become a landmark in the U.S. war effort. A year ago, a writer for Time magazine reported in March 1942, Willow Run was a lazy little creek west of Detroit, surrounded by woodlands, a few farmhouses, a few country schools. Willow Run in 1942 was an industrial powerhouse that throbbed with round-the-clock activity of men and machines. Out of the Michigan countryside had arisen buildings, factories, administrative offices, a hospital, dormitory, and powerhouse, all framed by the airport and the seemingly endless concrete ribbons of the airfield's runways. Yet, already voices were being raised in criticism of Willow Run. Following a visit by the Senate Investigating Committee, I believe this was headed by Harry Truman, one of its members commented on February 15th, 1943. He said, "Apparently, there has been practically no production to amount to anything. The concern was summed up by a comic who renamed the plant Will It Run? The primary reason for delay was a shortage of workers. Early in March, a major decision was reached. If workers could not be found for the job, take the job to the workers. At several Ford plants in Michigan and Ohio, labor was available, and the production of a variety of parts and components was transferred to the Rouge manufacturing area, to Highland Park, and to Hamilton, Ohio. Outside suppliers were consulted, and numerous firms awarded subcontracts. Initially, no increase in production was apparent, but by June 1943, Willow Run was producing 190 planes a month and 231 by August. Finally, toward the end of 1943, the increasing skill of Ford workers and the extensive subcontracting began to have effect. As the Willow Run plant was keyed to meet the mounting flow of parts and components from outside, fanning them throughout the plant into the mile-long moving assembly line, production leapt ahead dramatically. In September, 253 bombers were built. In October, 308, and by the end of the year, the plant was turning out 365 B-24s a month. Willow Run now entered its period of glory, refuting its doubters and astonishing its supporters. Production soared, consistently meeting and exceeding quotas, and on March 3rd, 1944, the Aircraft Production Board telegraphed the following: "The APB notes with pride that our confidence in your company's ability to maintain a fine, sustained production record has again been proven. Our sincerest congratulations." By the end of 1944, Ford's capacity stood at 650 planes a month, and the company was making 45.5% of all of the Liberator bombers. By 1945, we were making 70% of those bombers. When it closed down at the end of the war, Willow Run had produced a total of 8,685 planes. Ford had brought mass production and moving assembly techniques to the aircraft business with great success. A summary of Ford's outstanding contribution to the nation's war effort is to be found in the publication The Army Air Forces in World War II, and I quote, "The Ford venture at Willow Run was unique in its application of automotive mass production methods to aircraft assembly on a scale far beyond anything yet attempted. Ford made a notable contribution to aircraft production." Ford's war production also included 57,000 aircraft engines, 278,000 Jeeps, and a wide array of other military vehicles and weapons. I'm sure this remarkable record would not have been achieved without a contribution by that superb resource known as the Henry Ford Trade School. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. As I promised Tuesday, no, it's not engraved. That's it's a recycled cover. I don't like to throw things away. We learned that in a trade school: waste not, want not.
I have 7 of these.
You do? But in here, you have special issues of the Alumni News. July 1963, celebrating Mr. Ford's centennial. The October 1966, celebrating our 50th anniversary of the school. And you have there 1971, when Dr. Searle became 100 years old. Now you'll find a lot of history in those 3 volumes, but we also included something that you're the only second, well, you'll be the 3rd person to get it. It's the thesis by Fred Nicholson, A More Complete History of the Henry Ford Trade School. That's where we got most of our figures. You have everything in there. I'm not going to take up a lot of time to tell you what's in there, but I think you'll appreciate it being a historian. In this year, this year Detroit is starting a new history of the 20th century and what part the Ford Motor Company played in it. And I want to make sure that this Alumni Association, the amount of guys we have left, make sure that Mr. Ford is at the head of that column. Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you.
This one is addressed to Mr. Andrew McHugh, President, Henry Ford Alumni Association, Shiawassee, Detroit. Dear Mr. McHugh, on behalf of myself and the entire Ford team, I want to congratulate the members of the Henry Ford Alumni Association on their 75th anniversary of the organization. I'm sure if Mr. Ford were here today, he would be filled with pride, knowing that his trade school students carry on the tradition of excellence he formulated in 1916, and that they share a very strong common bond. To quote Mr. Henry Ford, craftsmanship without character is worthless. And this character which made the school a success and kept its alumni together for 75 years. Congratulations, sincerely, Harold A. Poling, known to most of us as Red.
The English Trade School is having their 61st anniversary celebration. Henry?
Hello. I got a letter from the old boys, and I'll read it to you, and I'd like Andy McHugh to come up here, if I may. I'll read you the letter. It's a short letter. The British Old Boys would appreciate it if the alumni would accept this to commemorate their 75th anniversary.
Very nice.
If you feel it appropriate to make some reference to it during your celebration dinner, then please give our apologies for not being representative, or explain that by remarkable coincidence your dinner and our annual dinner are on the same date. Ours is a little later because due to the time shift. We have retained a duplicate of the certificate to display to our members on the night. Having a good party, we will drink a toast to you at the dinner, but it will be a poor substitute to meeting you all once again. Regards from the Ford Trade School of Old Boys Association. This was sent by Ron Gale, and he was here last year. Now, Andy, would you read what it says on there? I don't really know what it does.
You know, Ford Trade School, Old Boys Association of Great Britain congratulates colleagues of the Henry Ford Trade School on the 75th anniversary of foundation. Our common bond is the name of our esteemed founder and benefactor, Henry Ford, and through that link, may our two associations flourish in the years ahead. Michael Bowles, President, 25th of October, 1991.
When we had our general membership meeting every month, we very rarely adjourn our meeting and not have Tiny Lenhart come up and say something. I hope he says it nice and clean, Tiny. I didn't want to give you any warning because I know you don't need any. And he's got a cane. What happened to you, old man? Arthritis? He still looks darn healthy.
It hasn't affected my head, let's say it that way. Extemporaneously, you always like to add something like this with a couple of laughs. So I'll give you. I try to talk into that mic, I'll blast you out of the place. If that's all right with you, that's the way you'll get it. The local post office got a letter addressed to God. And they didn't know what to do with it, so they opened it. And it was written by a little boy who said, God, my widow mother has 7 children. We don't have any food, we don't have any heat or anything else like that. Would you please send us $500? The people in the post office thought this, what can they do about it? And they took up a collection. And they collected $300, put it in an envelope and mailed it to the little boy. A week or so later, they got another letter back from him and said, Dear God, the next time you send it to us, don't send it through the post office. They deducted $200.
Thank you, Paul. Speaking for all of you, it's a very humble experience for me, but I think I like to speak for all of you and say it's just wonderful to be here to celebrate the memory of 75 years of Henry Ford Trade School. I'm a parish priest from St. Constance Church in Taylor. It's a very unique church. Matter of fact, we have our doors wide open to all denominations, 5s, 10s, 20s, and 50s. And I like to steal a little of Ross's, Nicholson's Methodist presentation for the closing prayer. So please bow your head so you don't see me reading this from the sheet. This is our prayer. Creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for your copious blessings. We give thanks always for the gifts of labor, the gifts of education, and the gift of friendship, which Henry and Edsel Ford shared with us. May we always be motivated with their memory in our hearts to reach out with compassion and concern for those who are hurting. Lord, keep us in your love, and may God bless you all with good health, friends, peace, and joy. Amen.
As president of the Henry Ford Trade School alumni, I'd like to thank the committee and their wives who have done such a wonderful job of putting this up, and the ladies that helped decorate it. I take great pride in the crowd of people that came to it, and I think I'll take even greater pride when I come to the 100th anniversary of the Henry Ford Trade School alumni. Thank you.